Saturday, we found out Derek Meadows, highly sought after wide receiver recruit, picked LSU over a handful of teams, including the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. So obviously, this was a disappointing result for Marcus Freeman, Mike Brown, and the Fighting Irish. First, let me just ask you how difficult of a recruiting battle this was from a Notre Dame standpoint and how they almost pulled it off.
I mean, coming close in second doesn't really mean anything, Darren. You can come in second, you can come in 15th. It's still tough. Now, what it does do is set Notre Dame up for the position to where they can go flip Derek Meadows. That's at least the hope for the Notre Dame staff. I don't think it's a coincidence that Deuce Knight and former director of recruiting, now director of player personnel, GM, Chad Bowden tweeted out or posted on Instagram, it's not over yet with the Shamrock emoji. Notre Dame still very much going to be targeting Derek Meadows moving forward, but this is, Darren, a pretty brutal recruiting loss for a handful of reasons. I've talked about this on our blue and gold message board, I'm sure as well in our interviews, Darren. When Ivan Taylor flips from Notre Dame to Michigan, it's not like it's a loss because Ivan Taylor's a really good prospect, but it's not the end of the world because you still have Jadon Blair committed and Ethan Long committed. You might go get a really nice under the radar type guy in Brandon Logan, who's a Vanderbilt baseball commit, an outstanding athlete. But that's not really the case with Derek Meadows because Notre Dame's receiver class hasn't been hitting on all cylinders yet. I think Elijah Burst is better than a lot of people think. I think he's like a 4-star type of guy, like a low 4-star. Bettis, to me, in my personal opinion, is a safety at the next level. I think he has more upside at the safety position. I've been told that like Deion Colsey is a comp for Jerome Bettis at the next level, which is actually pretty decent. If Colsey were able to stay healthy over his Notre Dame career, who knows what could happen with him, Darren. But you just have two guys going into fall camp when typically Notre Dame wants to have their core class committed, and then moving forward, you're just going big game hunting, flipping guys, that kind of thing. At receiver, it's not really back to square one, but in a way, Darren, it kind of is.
From my standpoint, just as someone that follows recruiting through your words and what you post at blueandgold.com, it's been a tough few weeks because, Mike, you've seen Notre Dame lose wide receiver recruits to Washington, USC, Stanford, and now LSU. And I look at the Notre Dame program right now, and for wide receivers, this is a very healthy time to join Notre Dame because they're a top 10 program. I think it's fair to say. Marcus Freeman is your point man for recruiting, and he's not only the closer, he's the starter, and he's in the middle. I mean, he's heavily involved. You got a great offensive coordinator in Mike Denbrock. Look what he did at LSU. And you've got CJ Carr and Deuce Knight sitting in queue right now, waiting to be, as I speak for wide receivers, your quarterback while your time at the University of Notre Dame. I think that's why, maybe one of the reasons why Notre Dame fans are a little frustrated right now.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I called in to John Kennedy's show, Always Irish, this morning, and he was saying, look, this is 20 years. Like, the frustration is 20 years of, receiver play that is not up to what they want, or receiver recruiting, I should say. And that obviously translates to the field a lot of times. But yeah, look, it is frustrating, and I get it. Derek Meadows is a guy that the staff has wanted for quite some time, but we have very short memories in some aspects. But then we'll just focus on that. We'll look at the past 20 years. Well, what just about last year? Like, receiver recruiting is not as in bad of a shape when you look at the past couple of years as people would like to think. I mean, this 2024 class, Darren, with Micah Gilbert, Logan Saldate, Cam Williams was like a 5-star the entire cycle. So there's just this weird thing that happens a lot of times in recruiting, Darren. It's like, as the community, we complain that our guys aren't ranked high enough. And in the same breath, we complain we're not getting good enough recruits. Which one is it? So, it's just kind of one of those things. But yeah, in terms of, this, and I'm not like trying to say, hey, 2025 receiver recruiting, it's all it's all, good and dandy. It's not like they probably, in hindsight, they could have done a lot of things differently to avoid this situation, but they swung for the fences, and for the lack of a better term, they struck out. But the good thing is, Darren, they do have another at bat. They have 5 months, a little less than 5 months until National Signing Day. 5 months. There's a long ways to go. And Dylan Robinson committed to Washington. Notre Dame wanted him. He wanted to play defensive back. I don't know. I don't know what you do
And
about
you
that.
do.
Tanook Hines, I never got the sense the Irish were really pushing that hard for him. Different discussion for a different day, probably offline. And John Anthony Hall, just a different cat. He ended up at Stanford. It is what it is there. I would have liked to see him in the class, but he wants to go to Stanford. So what are you gonna do? So again, I'm not trying to push back on people being upset about 2025 receiver recruiting right now. It's not good enough if you're trying to win a national championship, but it's not time to panic. At least not for me.
See, I'm glad you pointed out about how there was a 2-year cycle where recruiting went very well. I see so many people say Dell Alexander through now, it's just been bad, bad, bad. But you look at the 2-year cycle under Chancey Stuckey, and you started to see the wide receiver
Yeah,
talent come back to the program. Now, for whatever reason, it didn't work out for Chancey. Otherwise, at Notre Dame, he moved on. Mike Brown came in, and I got the impression Mike is a really good wide receiver coach that is still learning the recruiting game. And maybe that's part of the process right now. But the good news is he's got a bunch of veteran people around him that
yeah.
can possibly help in this situation.
Yeah, I don't know if Brown's learning the recruiting game. I would hope he knows it by now, but maybe improving
Yes,
in
thank
the
you.
recruiting game. I think Stuckey was a tremendous recruiter. I think that he came to Notre Dame from Baylor, right? He was the Bears receivers coach for a year. And then before that, he was in the recruiting department, I believe, at Clemson, his alma mater. I think that might be more like Chancey Stuckey's role. I don't think he's working anywhere right now, but he could be a really good recruiting office guy. I don't know if he's a receivers coach. Just my opinion. I think Chancey was an amazing recruiter. I don't know about a coach. Brown is a little bit more heavy on the development side, really good coach. And my sources believe, hey, just wait till you see the group this season. I feel like I've been fooled before, but we'll see how the guys look this fall. But Brown might not be the dynamic recruiter that Stuckey was. And you talk about stacking a couple classes. Just if you look on paper, Darren, that 2023 class of Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores, and Braylon James, blue chip prospects, big time offers, highly rated guys. And you get 2 transfer out after a semester. Like sometimes we're, and then who else in that class, Darren? The walk-on Jordan Faison, who could be the best of that group. So things on paper don't always translate to exactly what you see on the field.
So we are where we are right now. As you said, 5 months to go, a lot can change. Worst case scenario, the light at the end of the tunnel is you do have the transfer portal
Yeah.
to help you fill a couple of holes if need be, looking ahead to the following season.
Right. Let me consider that this is the difference between Notre Dame and a lot of schools. If Notre Dame, let's say, strikes out, they just can't get anyone in this 2025 class, Darren, at receiver. Other programs can say, hey, we'll go and get players from that class the next year, the year after, when they're, redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomores, whatever. Notre Dame can't do that. They have to bring in their 1-year rentals. Here and there, maybe. I mean, we're talking a couple times a decade, they're able to get some underclassmen. I believe it was Alohi Gilman was, but we're talking guys who are like juniors. Riley Leonard, junior coming from Duke. The Northwestern safety from a couple. No, Brandon Joseph. Brandon Joseph, I believe, came as an undergrad. So
Correct.
you do get some but they're like the upperclassmen guys. You're not able to get too many underclassmen like the other schools do. Like Notre Dame doesn't underclassmen in terms of like freshmen, sophomores. Notre Dame getting guys from the transfer portal is more like junior, senior. So yeah, you can get the 1-year rentals, which is when you look back at Notre Dame receiver recruiting in 2020, 2021, 2022, that is why the Irish are in the transfer portal right now, getting Collins, getting Chris Mitchell, getting Jaden Harrison. It's because of those, the classes from a few years ago. What you want to do in an ideal world is get freshmen, sophomore guys coming off of, just their first couple seasons in college football. Notre Dame's not really able to do that. So they do have to land guys in the high school class. I think they'll end up with 4 receivers in this class, Darren. They would love it to be Derek Meadows and then someone else they really like to pair with Jerome Bettis and Elijah Burris, but it remains to be seen what ends up happening there.
It would be great if Mike Denbrock and this offense had a tremendous 2024, and that can make a difference.
Proofs is in the pudding on that. You don't have to sell something. You can just say, hey, go look at what we did first year under these 2 guys.